There is a moment, a specific, shocking, deeply painful moment where you discover that the avoidant person you loved, the person you gave your patience and your understanding and your genuine care to, the person you tried so hard to make feel safe and valued and worthy of love, that this person has done something that betrays your trust in ways you never imagined they were capable of. Maybe they've been involved with someone else while telling you they needed space to figure things out. Maybe they've shared intimate details of your relationship with people you don't know, violating the privacy you thought was sacred between you. Maybe they've deliberately created situations designed to make you jealous, staging encounters or posting things, or behaving in ways specifically calculated to trigger your insecurity and make you question your worth and your position in their life. Maybe they've lied about something significant, their feelings, their actions, their intentions, in ways that make you question everything you thought you understood about who they are and what you meant to them. And the betrayal isn't just about the specific action. It's about what the action reveals, that they were willing to hurt you, willing to violate your trust, willing to put their own needs above your well-being in ways that demonstrate level of selfishness or carelessness or calculated manipulation that you didn't think they possessed. The pain is compounded by the confusion, because the betrayal often doesn't make sense within the logic of someone who claims to care about you. Why would they do something that hurts you if they actually care? Why would they risk losing you through betrayal if you actually matter to them? Why would they create the exact situation most likely to push you away if they want to keep you in their life? But here is the devastating truth that understanding avoidant psychology reveals. Sometimes the betrayal isn't accidental or impulsive, or the result of them not caring about consequences. Sometimes, often, the betrayal is strategic. Not consciously strategic necessarily, not carefully planned in ways they could articulate if asked, but strategic at the level of their defensive system, strategic in service of specific psychological needs the betrayal meets, strategic because the betrayal accomplishes something their direct communication never could accomplish. And one of the things betrayal accomplishes, one of the psychological functions it serves, one of the needs it meets that nothing else seems to meet as effectively, it gets your attention. Complete, total, unavoidable attention. When you are loving them steadily and being present consistently and making yourself available reliably, they could take that for granted, could ignore it, could let it fade into the background of their awareness as just the baseline state of things. But betrayal cannot be ignored, cannot be taken for granted, cannot fade into background. Betrayal demands response. It creates crisis. It forces you to focus entirely on them and on the relationship and on what's happening between you. And for the avoidant whose wounds include desperate need for attention, paired with terror of asking for it directly, whose psychology includes need to feel significant, paired with inability to tolerate the vulnerability of mattering to someone who could choose to leave, betrayal becomes twisted solution to impossible problem. It gets them the attention they desperately need without requiring them to admit they need it. It creates crisis that forces your focus without requiring them to vulnerably ask you to focus on them. It makes them feel powerful and desired and pursued without requiring them to be vulnerable enough to communicate that they want to feel these things. Understanding why avoidants betray you to get attention doesn't excuse the behavior. Betrayal is betrayal regardless of psychological motivation behind it. But understanding the mechanism helps you make sense of behavior that otherwise feels senseless, helps you recognize patterns you might have missed, helps you protect yourself from accepting explanations that minimize what happened or blame you for their choices, and most importantly, helps you recognize that the betrayal was never verdict on your worth or your adequacy, but was always evidence of their profound dysfunction and their complete inability to get their needs met in healthy ways that don't destroy the people who love them. These specific psychological needs that betrayal meets for the avoidant, that direct communication never could. Betrayal serves multiple psychological functions for the avoidant simultaneously. Meeting needs their defensive system prevents them from meeting through healthy direct communication. Understanding what needs the betrayal actually serves reveals why it happens, despite the damage it causes, and despite the avoidant often claiming they didn't want to hurt you. Betrayal creates immediate crisis that guarantees your complete attention when your steady, consistent love had become something they could take for granted and therefore ignore. When you're loving the avoidant consistently, showing up reliably, being emotionally available, demonstrating your care through steady presence, your attention becomes baseline. It's always there. It becomes invisible through its consistency. Like background noise, the avoidant stops consciously registering. Their nervous system isn't activated by steady love. They don't feel the intensity or the aliveness that comes from uncertainty. Your reliable presence doesn't create the drama or the emotional activation that makes them feel like something significant is happening. This creates specific problem for avoidant who needs attention, but whose psychology makes them unable to appreciate steady attention. They need attention that feels intense, that activates their nervous system, that makes them feel like they matter in ways that create emotional charge. Betrayal creates exactly this. Your discovery of betrayal, your pain, your anger, your confusion, your demands for explanation, gives them your complete focus in ways your steady love never did. Suddenly, they're at center of your entire emotional world. Every thought is about them and what they did and what it means. You're not taking them for granted anymore because betrayal makes taking them for granted impossible. They've activated your nervous system, created intensity, generated the emotional charge their system craves. This attention feels like significance to them, even though it's negative attention, even though it's destroying the relationship, even though they're getting attention through causing you pain, rather than through genuine connection. The betrayal also proves to them that they matter to you and have power over your emotional state, when your steady love didn't provide this proof in ways their wounds could recognize. The avoidance wounds include deep uncertainty about whether they actually matter to anyone, whether anyone would actually care if they disappeared, whether their presence or absence makes real difference in anyone's life. Your steady love should prove they matter. You're choosing to be with them, showing up consistently, demonstrating through daily actions that they are important to you. But steady love is quiet. It doesn't create dramatic demonstrations of caring. It doesn't force you to prove your investment through crisis response. The avoidance wounds make them unable to trust quiet, steady proof. They need dramatic proof, proof that comes through crisis, proof that demonstrates you care enough to fight for them, or suffer over them, or center your entire emotional world on them when they're threatened. Betrayal creates this proof. Your devastation proves they matter. Your pain proves they have impact. Your desperate attempts to understand or fix things, or demand accountability, prove they're significant enough that losing them or being hurt by them creates major disruption in your life. This proof is toxic. It's proving their significance through causing you harm rather than through building connection. But to the avoidance wounded psychology, proof is proof. They're seeing evidence they matter in ways your steady love never provided, because their wounds prevent them from recognizing steady love as evidence of anything except your neediness or their own entrapped state. Betrayal allows them to feel pursued and desired again when the relationship had reached stage where they were expected to do reciprocal pursuing and desiring, which feels vulnerable. In early stages of relationship, maybe you pursued them. Maybe you showed more interest. Maybe you were the one making plans and initiating contact and demonstrating desire. This felt safe to them because they held the power. They were being pursued, being desired, being wanted. But as relationship developed, the dynamic evolved. You expected reciprocity. You needed them to pursue you sometimes, to demonstrate their desire, to make you feel wanted too. This reciprocal expectation terrifies the avoidant because pursuing means risking rejection. Demonstrating desire means being vulnerable. Making someone feel wanted requires exposing that you want them, which gives them power to hurt you by withdrawing. Betrayal resets the dynamic. After betrayal, you're pursuing them, chasing answers, demanding explanation, fighting to understand what happened and why. They're being desired again. You're demonstrating through your pain and your persistence that you want them badly enough to stay even after betrayal. They're wanted again. Your continued engagement proves they're desirable even when they're behaving badly. This reset allows them to return to dynamic that felt safe, being pursued without having to maintain the reciprocal dynamic that felt vulnerable, doing the pursuing. The betrayal creates situation where they get to be the center of emotional drama without being vulnerable themselves. You're the one who's devastated while they maintain emotional control throughout. When avoidant betrays you, you're the one experiencing big emotions, devastation, anger, confusion, grief, betrayal. You're crying or yelling or demanding answers or trying to understand how this happened. You're emotionally exposed, vulnerable, at their mercy for explanation or reassurance or any scrap of care they might offer. They get to remain emotionally controlled throughout. They might express regret or apologize, but they're not the one falling apart. They're not the one whose world has been shaken. They're not experiencing the emotional devastation they're observing in you. This dynamic is deeply satisfying to the avoidance wounds at unconscious level. Even though they might consciously hate seeing you in pain, they get all the intensity and significance and attention that emotional crisis creates without having to be the vulnerable one, without having to experience the devastating emotions themselves, without having to be the person whose world is falling apart. They're significant in your emotional world while maintaining their defended position. They matter intensely while remaining in control. This is perfect solution to their conflicting needs. Significance without vulnerability. Betrayal also tests whether you'll stay, providing answer to their constant underlying question about whether anyone would actually stay through their worst behavior. And if you do stay, it raises the stakes and increases the intensity they crave. The avoidant lives with constant underlying anxiety about whether anyone would actually stay if they saw who they really are, if they behaved badly enough, if they revealed their worst parts. Your steady love doesn't answer this question because you're staying through their best behavior, through their controlled presentation of self, not through their worst. Betrayal tests this question directly. Will you stay even when I've done something that justifies leaving? Will you continue caring even when I've betrayed your trust? If you leave, they have their answer and can confirm their belief that no one actually stays, ignoring that they created the situation that justified your leaving. If you stay, if you work through the betrayal, if you try to rebuild trust, if you continue investing in relationship after they've demonstrated they're not trustworthy, this provides twisted proof of your commitment while simultaneously raising the stakes of the relationship in ways that create more intensity. You've proven you'll stay through betrayal. This raises the bar for what they can get away with. It proves you're more invested than they thought. And perversely, it makes them feel more significant. If you stayed through betrayal, they must really matter to you, must be really important, must be worthy of the dedication you're demonstrating through giving them another chance. The act of betrayal itself provides them with feeling of power and control when the relationship progression was making them feel trapped and powerless. Betraying you reasserts their autonomy and reminds them they're free agent, not constrained by relationship expectations. As relationship develops, expectations develop with it. You expect certain behaviors: honesty, loyalty, consistency, emotional availability. These expectations feel like constraints to the avoidant, like loss of freedom, like being controlled or obligated or trapped. The progression toward commitment feels like walls closing in, like their autonomy being threatened, like becoming someone else's possession rather than remaining free agent. Betrayal reasserts their freedom. It proves to themselves they're not actually constrained by your expectations. They can do what they want, regardless of what you expect. It proves they're still autonomous agent, making their own choices, rather than being controlled by relationship obligations. It proves they're not trapped, because trapped person couldn't betray you. Betrayal itself is evidence of freedom. This restoration of felt autonomy is psychologically satisfying, even though it destroys trust and damages relationship. The momentary feeling of being free agent, unbound by anyone else's expectations, feels better to their defended psychology than the sustained feeling of being in committed relationship where certain behaviors are off limits out of respect for partners' boundaries and feelings. How the betrayal is specifically designed to trigger your anxious pursuit while allowing them to maintain distance. The type of betrayal avoidants engage in often has specific characteristics that reveal it's functioning strategically, consciously, or unconsciously, to create particular dynamic where they get attention and pursuit while maintaining the emotional distance that feels safe to them. Understanding these characteristics helps you recognize the pattern. The betrayal is often ambiguous enough that you cannot know the full truth without pursuing them for answers, forcing you to chase clarity while they control what information you receive and when. Complete obvious betrayal would allow you to make clean decision. They cheated, you have proof, relationship is over. But avoidance betrayal is frequently ambiguous. Maybe they were just talking to someone else, but the conversations were intimate in ways that cross lines, even if nothing physical happened. Maybe they were seen with someone, but they claim it was innocent, even though the circumstances looked damning. Maybe they lied about something, but they frame it as omission rather than lying, as protecting you rather than deceiving you. This ambiguity means you cannot reach resolution without pursuing them for more information. You need answers to questions you now have. You need clarification about what actually happened versus what they're claiming happened. You need to understand their motivations and their feelings and what they're thinking about the relationship. This pursuit is exactly what they needed. You're now chasing them for information, for clarity, for resolution. They control what information you receive and how much and when. Maintaining power while you're in vulnerable position of needing something from them they can choose to give or withhold. The ambiguity wasn't accidental. It serves the function of forcing you to pursue while they maintain control. They often reveal the betrayal in ways designed to maximize your emotional reaction rather than minimizing harm, telling you directly or ensuring you'll find out, or creating a situation where discovery is inevitable. If avoidant actually wanted to protect you from pain, they would either not betray you, or, if betrayal occurred impulsively, they would keep it private to minimize harm while working to ensure it never happens again. But often the avoidance betrayals become known in ways that feel deliberate. They tell you directly, claiming honesty, while actually creating maximum drama. Or they behave in ways that ensure you'll find out, leaving evidence where you'll see it, behaving publicly in ways that guarantee someone will tell you. Or they create situations where discovery is inevitable, bringing the other person into your social circle, using platforms they know you monitor. This method of revelation serves specific purpose, maximizing your emotional reaction. The bigger your reaction, the more attention they get, the more they've proven they matter, the more intensely you'll pursue resolution. If you'd never found out, the betrayal couldn't serve its psychological function of creating crisis that gets your attention. The revelation is part of the strategy, not an unfortunate byproduct. The betrayal typically occurs precisely when relationship was progressing toward more commitment or when you'd started pulling back. Timing that suggests it's triggered by their discomfort with intimacy or their anxiety about losing you, rather than being spontaneous, unrelated event. If you examine timing, the betrayal often correlates with specific relationship developments. Maybe you'd recently had conversation about future, and they felt pressured. Maybe you'd met their family, and things felt more serious than their comfort zone allows. Maybe you'd started talking about moving in together and they felt walls closing in. Or timing correlates with your behavior changing. Maybe you'd recently started pulling back after being too available, creating space they weren't comfortable with, demonstrating you had life independent of them that threatened their sense of significance. The betrayal happening at these specific moments reveals it's reactive. It's triggered by their discomfort with progression or by their panic about losing you, rather than being unrelated spontaneous action. This timing makes the strategic function clear. Betrayal resets relationship to earlier, less intimate stage, or betrayal reasserts their significance when your pulling back threatened their ego. The timing is evidence of psychological motivation, rather than evidence of spontaneous moral failing. After betrayal is revealed, they often create hot-cold dynamic where they alternate between seeming remorseful and seeming detached, keeping you in state of uncertainty that maintains your attention while preventing the resolution that would allow you to emotionally settle. If they were fully remorseful, consistently expressing regret, doing everything possible to rebuild trust, maintaining openness and vulnerability, you could begin healing, and relationship could move toward either genuine resolution or clean ending. If they were fully detached, clearly not caring, obviously wanting out, making it clear they're done, you could grieve and leave. But instead, they typically alternate. One day they're expressing remorse and wanting to fix things, making you believe reconciliation is possible. Next day they're cold and distant, making you fear they don't care and never will. This alternation keeps you in constant state of uncertainty that prevents you from settling into either healing or leaving. The uncertainty keeps you engaged with them, keeps your attention focused on them and their behavior and what they're thinking and feeling. You're constantly trying to figure out which version is real, constantly monitoring their moods and their words for clues about what they actually want. This constant attention is exactly what the betrayal was designed to create, and the hot-cold dynamic maintains it long after the initial crisis of discovery. They frequently minimize the betrayal while simultaneously using it as leverage, claiming it wasn't that bad while also reminding you it happened whenever they want to shift power dynamic in their favor. On one hand, they minimize. It didn't mean anything. You're overreacting. I don't understand why you're still upset about this. It was just whatever minimization makes the betrayal sound insignificant. This minimization serves to make you doubt your reaction, to make you feel like you're being too sensitive or holding grudges or unable to move forward. But simultaneously, the betrayal becomes a tool they can use to maintain power. When you try to express needs or establish boundaries or expect certain behavior from them, they remind you that you're lucky they're still here after you couldn't get over their mistake, or they point out that you're being demanding given that relationship already has trust issues, or they use your continued suspicion, which they created through their behavior, as evidence you're the one with issues preventing relationship from being healthy. The betrayal becomes simultaneously something they minimize when it benefits them, and something they leverage when it benefits them, creating a situation where you're perpetually off balance and they maintain control of the narrative. The betrayal often involves them sharing details or creating displays that seem designed specifically to trigger your particular insecurities, suggesting they're using intimate knowledge of your vulnerabilities as weapon rather than betrayal being impersonal or random. The specific nature of betrayal often targets exactly what you're most insecure about. If you've expressed insecurity about your appearance, the betrayal involves someone who represents exactly what you're insecure about not having. If you've shared fears about not being interesting enough, the betrayal involves person or situation that highlights this specific fear. If you've been vulnerable about past betrayals or specific trust wounds, their betrayal echoes those wounds almost precisely. This targeting of your specific vulnerabilities is evidence that betrayal isn't random or impersonal. It's using intimate knowledge they gained through your vulnerability against you in ways that maximize your pain and your sense of inadequacy. This weaponization of your vulnerabilities, while simultaneously getting attention through your resulting insecurity and pursuit of reassurance, is perhaps the most psychologically damaging aspect of the pattern. What the betrayal reveals about how little emotional safety you actually had in the relationship, despite appearances. The betrayal, once it occurs, illuminates reality about the relationship that might not have been visible before. That emotional safety you thought existed was actually never there, that you were extending trust that was never actually honored, that the foundation you believed you were building on was unstable in ways you couldn't see until betrayal made the instability undeniable. The fact that betrayal was possible reveals they were always capable of prioritizing their own psychological needs over your well-being. This capacity existed throughout relationship, even during periods that felt safe and good. When relationship felt good, when they were being warm and present, when things seemed stable, you believed you were safe with them, believed they cared enough about your well-being that they would consider how their choices would affect you, believed they valued your trust enough that they wouldn't jeopardize it. The betrayal reveals this belief was based on incomplete information. The capacity to betray you was always there. The willingness to prioritize their needs for attention, for feeling significant, for maintaining control, for reasserting autonomy over your well-being was always present. The difference between before betrayal and after betrayal isn't that they became a different person. It's that before betrayal, you couldn't see who they actually were, and after betrayal, you can no longer maintain the illusion. They were always someone capable of hurting you to meet their own needs. The relationship was never as safe as you believed it was, because you were never with someone who would prioritize your well-being when it conflicted with their psychological needs. Their willingness to use betrayal to get attention rather than asking for attention directly reveals they never trusted you enough to be vulnerable, despite you trusting them with your vulnerability. Throughout relationship, you were vulnerable with them. You shared your fears, your wounds, your needs. You trusted them with your emotional safety. You believed this vulnerability was reciprocated or would eventually be reciprocated as trust developed. The betrayal reveals this reciprocity never existed. If they trusted you, if they felt emotionally safe with you, if they believed they could be vulnerable with you, they would have communicated their need for attention directly. They would have said, "I'm feeling taken for granted," or "I need to feel like I matter to you," or "I need more emotional engagement." They wouldn't have needed to create crisis through betrayal to get attention if they trusted that asking for attention directly would be met with care and responsiveness. The fact that they betrayed you to get attention reveals they never trusted you enough to simply ask for what they needed, which means the emotional safety you thought you'd created together existed only in your direction. You felt safe enough to be vulnerable with them, but they never felt safe enough to be vulnerable with you. despite all your efforts to create that safety. The betrayal demonstrates that boundaries you thought existed and were mutually understood were actually never agreed upon or respected. You assumed shared understanding about relationship parameters that was never actually shared. You believed certain behaviors were understood to be off limits, being intimate with others, sharing private relationship details outside the relationship, deliberately creating jealousy, whatever specific betrayal occurred. You thought this was mutually understood boundary, assumed both of you agreed these behaviors would damage relationship, and therefore neither of you would engage in them. The betrayal reveals this mutual understanding never existed. They either never agreed to the boundaries you thought were established, or they agreed but never intended to actually respect them, or they agreed in the moment but never internalized the agreement as genuine constraint on their behavior. This revelation means you were operating under false assumptions about what relationship parameters actually were. You thought you were in relationship with clear, established boundaries. You were actually in relationship where boundaries were unclear, unshared, or openly disrespected. You just didn't know it until betrayal made it undeniable. Their ability to betray you reveals that when their needs conflict with relationship health, they will choose their needs, meaning relationship was never actually their priority, despite what they claimed or what their behavior sometimes suggested. During good periods, you might have believed relationship was priority for both of you. Maybe they said things that suggested you were their priority. Maybe they behaved in ways that seemed to confirm relationship mattered to them. But priority is tested not during good times, but during moments when priorities conflict, when maintaining relationship health requires sacrificing something else you want, when doing right thing for relationship means uncomfortable growth or difficult honesty, or choosing partner's well-being over your own immediate gratification. Betrayal is exactly such moment. Their need for attention, for power, for intensity, whatever need the betrayal served, conflicted with relationship health. They chose their need. This reveals hierarchy that was always there, but wasn't visible during times when their needs and relationship health weren't in conflict. You were never actually their priority. Their psychological needs were always their priority. When the two conflicted, you lost. The relationship lost. Every time. The betrayal often reveals they were sharing details of your relationship or of your vulnerabilities with others in ways you never consented to, meaning your privacy was being violated throughout relationship, not just during the betrayal. Sometimes the betrayal itself involves discovering they've shared things you told them in confidence, your insecurities, your sexual details, your private conflicts, your vulnerabilities. This sharing might have been occurring throughout relationship. They were telling friends or exes or new people they were interested in about private aspects of your relationship and your individual psychologies. You thought intimate things you shared were held in confidence between you. They were actually being shared with others for various purposes: to get sympathy for themselves, to make themselves seem interesting, to bond with others through sharing your vulnerabilities, to frame themselves as victim or hero in narrative where you're the problem. This violation means your privacy was never respected throughout relationship. You just didn't know it. The safe container you thought existed for your vulnerabilities never actually existed. They were always willing to violate your privacy when it served their needs for connection with others or for framing themselves favorably in others' eyes. Why understanding the betrayal as attention-seeking behavior doesn't excuse it, but does help you protect yourself going forward. Understanding that betrayal serves psychological function, that it was strategic attempt to meet attention needs the avoidant couldn't meet through healthy communication, doesn't make the betrayal acceptable or excusable, but it does provide crucial information that serves your healing and your future protection. Understanding the psychological function helps you recognize that reconciliation is only possible if they address the underlying wounds driving the behavior. Without that work, forgiveness simply creates opening for repeated pattern. If you choose to work through the betrayal, if you try to rebuild trust, if you give relationship another chance, understanding that betrayal was symptom of deeper psychological wound means you can evaluate whether actual healing is occurring. Are they in therapy addressing their attachment wounds? Are they developing capacity to ask for attention directly rather than creating crises? Are they learning to communicate needs vulnerably rather than manipulating to get needs met? Without this deeper work, forgiveness and reconciliation simply create opportunity for pattern to repeat. The wounds that drove the betrayal haven't been addressed. The psychology that made betrayal seem like a reasonable solution to their attention needs hasn't changed. The next time they need intense attention, or need to feel significant, or need to reassert power, they'll use the same strategy because it worked last time, and because they haven't developed alternative strategies. Understanding this helps you set appropriate boundaries about what reconciliation requires, rather than accepting apology and promises without requiring evidence of actual psychological growth. Recognizing betrayal as attention-seeking helps you understand that your response is exactly what they wanted. Your devastation, your pursuit of answers, your complete focus on them, which means the betrayal achieved its goal, even though it destroyed trust. When you're devastated by betrayal, when you're pursuing them for explanations, when you cannot stop thinking about what happened and what it means and why they did it, you're giving them exactly what the betrayal was designed to create. Your pain is proof of their significance. Your pursuit is proof you care. Your devastation is evidence they matter enough to hurt you deeply. This is deeply unfair and deeply disturbing realization. But understanding it helps you recognize that the appropriate response to attention-seeking betrayal isn't to give them the attention they're seeking. The appropriate response is to recognize the manipulation, name it if you choose to, and withdraw the attention they're trying to extract from you through causing you pain. This doesn't mean suppressing your genuine emotional response. You're entitled to feel devastated by betrayal. But it means recognizing that pursuing them, demanding answers, centering your life on understanding what happened and why, this gives them exactly what they wanted and reinforces that betrayal is effective strategy for getting your attention. Understanding the pattern helps you recognize that if you stay, you're teaching them that betrayal works, that they can hurt you to get attention and you'll still be there, which raises likelihood of repeated betrayal. Your response to betrayal teaches them about what's possible in relationship with you. If you stay without requiring significant demonstrated change, if you accept apologies without seeing sustained behavioral transformation, if you rebuild trust without them doing the underlying psychological work, if you forgive relatively easily and quickly, you're teaching them that betrayal isn't actually that costly. They can betray your trust to get attention they needed, and the ultimate consequence is temporary conflict followed by your continued presence. This teaches them that betrayal is viable strategy. They get the attention, they weather your temporary anger or hurt, and then things return to relationship as usual. Why wouldn't they use this strategy again when they need attention in future? Your staying without requiring change essentially rewards the betrayal by showing them they can have both. They can betray you to meet their needs, and they can keep you in their life anyway. Understanding this helps you recognize that protecting yourself means either leaving or staying only under conditions that require genuine therapeutic work and sustained behavioral change over a long period before trust is rebuilt. Recognizing the attention-seeking function helps you understand that future relationship with anyone requires you to recognize the difference between someone asking for attention healthily versus someone manipulating to get attention through creating crises. This experience, as painful as it's been, teaches you crucial discernment skill for future relationships. Healthy people who need more attention say so. They communicate, "I'm feeling disconnected. Can we spend more intentional time together?" Or, "I'm feeling taken for granted. I need to feel more appreciated." Or, "I'm needing more emotional engagement with you." They ask for what they need directly because they trust that asking directly will be met with care and responsiveness. They don't create crises to force your attention because they don't need to. Asking works. If someone cannot or will not ask for attention directly and instead create situations that force your attention through crisis or drama or betrayal, this is a sign of profound psychological dysfunction that will continue to create problems, regardless of how much attention you give or how responsive you are. Understanding this pattern helps you recognize it early in future relationships and respond appropriately by leaving or requiring they address the pattern therapeutically, rather than getting trapped in years of crisis-driven attention-seeking that destroys your peace and your trust. Understanding why the betrayal happened helps you release self-blame and recognize that you couldn't have prevented it through being more attentive or more available. The betrayal was about their wounds, not about your insufficiency. When betrayal happens, natural response is to examine your own behavior. Were you not attentive enough? Were you taking them for granted? Were you not making them feel valued? Did you do something that drove them to this? Understanding that betrayal was about meeting their psychological needs for intense attention in ways their wounds prevent them from seeking healthily helps you recognize that your behavior wasn't the cause. You could have been more attentive and the betrayal still would have occurred because steady attention isn't what they needed. They needed crisis-level attention, dramatic proof of their significance, intensity their nervous system craves. You could have made them feel valued in every possible way, and the betrayal still would have occurred because their wounds prevent them from actually receiving and internalizing the value you're communicating. They need to prove their value through creating situations where you fight for them, or suffer over them, or demonstrate through crisis response that they matter. Understanding this helps you recognize that the betrayal was inevitable, given their psychology regardless of what you did or didn't do. This isn't your fault. This was never something you could have prevented by being better, or more available, or more attentive. Their wounds created the need for crisis-based attention. Your behavior didn't create that need. Nothing you could have done differently would have eliminated it. The avoidance betrayal to get attention reveals profound dysfunction, inability to ask for needs directly, inability to receive steady attention as proof of significance, need to create crisis to feel alive, willingness to hurt you to meet their own needs. Understanding this helps you recognize that this person, as they currently are, cannot provide the healthy relationship you deserve. You deserve someone who asks for what they need directly. You deserve someone who recognizes and values steady, consistent attention rather than needing dramatic crisis to feel attended to. You deserve someone who can feel alive and significant in relationship without creating pain and chaos. And you deserve someone who would never hurt you to meet their own psychological needs. Someone who understands that hurting you conflicts with their value of protecting you and would therefore find healthy ways to meet their needs that don't involve violating your trust or causing you pain. The avoidant who betrayed you to get attention cannot currently provide this. Maybe with significant therapeutic work over extended period, they could develop this capacity, but they don't have it now, and you deserve it now. Understanding this helps you make clear decision about whether to stay only under conditions requiring demonstrated therapeutic work and sustained change, or whether to leave, recognizing that leaving isn't giving up on someone who deserves your devotion, but is protecting yourself from someone whose current psychology makes them unsafe to be in relationship with. Either choice is valid, but make it knowing that the betrayal wasn't about you, wasn't something you caused, wasn't something you could have prevented. It was always about them, their wounds, their needs, their profound inability to meet those needs in ways that don't destroy the people who love them. You deserved better then. You deserve better now. And you will find better with someone whose wounds have been healed enough that they can ask for attention directly, can receive steady love as proof of their significance, can feel alive in relationship without creating crisis. That person exists. That relationship is possible. And you are absolutely worthy of finding it.